Let's call the meeting to order, and we will begin with the invocation and the pledge. Ms. Campbell has agreed to lead us in these. You're recognized, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. Please join me and bow your heads. We ask you, Lord, to be with all of us, our county, state, and national leaders as they guide us through these difficult times. We ask for the health and well-being of our county, our nation, and the world. We ask for your guidance today in this meeting, that we make right decisions in your eyes for the health and well-being of those citizens of Escambia County that we serve. Grant us strength and courage to always make right and just decisions. We ask these prayers in the name of the Father and the Son. Lord, please hear our prayers. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which I think the staff is going to show in the boardroom. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. The first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. I have a couple of items that I want to add. Under unfinished business, I'd like to add minority recruitment mentoring and contracting. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
Madam Chairman.
That's under unfinished?
To anything, any additions or corrections to the agenda.
Madam Chairman.
Dr. Alexander?
I'm sorry?
Okay, that was Mr. Perkins.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Under board communications, I'd like to add recognition of Gabe Brown's service.
Okay. Board communication, okay. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Anyone else? Okay, then is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So move.
Been moved by Dr. Alexander. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any further discussion? Okay, we will vote by roll call. Amanda, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Benson?
Yes.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Dr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Dr. Walker? Okay, I don't think he's joined just yet.
Yes.
Okay, so it passes 4-0.
Thank you. The next item is public hearings, of which there's none. Following that, we have open forum. I have 3 people to address us in open forum. The first one is Ms. Alexis Boland, and after that will be Senator Doug Broxson, and following that is Pierce Schuessler. Ms. Boland, if you'll come to the podium and you may address us.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak before your board. The situation that I want to speak about is at our townhouses at 14180 River Road. Riverbend Townhomes, there are 10 units, 2 buildings, each building has 5 units. What we have discovered at our last homeowners association meeting last month is that for the whole time that these units have been there since 1984 or 5, we have been paying a bill that we thought was for our irrigation and our pool. But we have discovered that Unit 5's water and sewer is on our bill, and it's connected to our meter. So the homeowners would like to have that separated so that Unit 5 can have their own bill and we pay our bill. So I called a week ago, and then I came by here and I spoke to a nice young lady in customer service, Brianna, who was very nice. And then I went up to the engineering department and spoke to a Miss China and another lady named Kathy. And so what they were telling me at engineering is that we have to pay, well, let me back up, that's wrong. What Ms. Brianna told me is that we have to pay a $998 impact fee plus a fee of about $350 or $80 to make that change. So the homeowners are shocked because we feel like we've paid an impact fee at one time in our lives. And since we paid that bill from the beginning, we feel that we shouldn't have to now pay an impact fee to put in a new meter so that we can separate the service of Unit 5 off of our meter. So I've talked to several people about it, and I'm here today for the Homeowners Association to ask if you can agree to not charge us the impact fee so that we can go on and we're going to, as it is now, I don't know how much it's going to cost. We haven't got any estimates yet, to change that out to have the plumber do what is necessary so that we can have water just for our pool and our irrigation, which is the way it was thought to be this whole time. So that's what I'm asking for.
Thank you, Ms. Boland. And before any board member questions, I'd like to ask Mr. Woody. I know Mr. Woody has done some research on the whole history of this policy and probably can present us with some options to discuss. So you're recognized, Mr. Woody.
Thank you. I'm speaking through the microphone system that's here in the boardroom, so you won't see my microphone shown as mute or off if you're looking down in that corner. I've taken a look, Ms. Boland, at what information we've had in terms of impact fees, literally back to 1981. We've had 7 different changes in that period of time since we first instigated a impact fee when ECUA was created. The if the townhome had been separated as you're wanting to do now, if it had been done that way originally, there would have been an impact fee applied at that time, albeit at a different rate because it was 1981 as opposed to the time that it is now. The cost that you were quoted when you spoke with China and others in both the engineering and the customer service was based on the lesser of the 2 options of either residential or commercial for a 5/8 inch connection. That was a water tap fee that would apply for setting up the new meter service, and a water deposit fee. The larger item at issue is the water impact fee. What I would propose, since consumption won't change essentially, but there is a very real cost associated with installing the meter. That's physical work being conducted now in the present day. I would propose the following, and that would be that the appropriate and applicable residential water tap fee be applied. That's $550, and a water deposit fee of $21.50. I would propose that instead of the current water impact fee, that would be $845 at present day, that we apply what would have been applicable back in 1984 to 86 when these units were connected, and that would have been a $75 fee. That would bring your total connection to $646.50 instead of the $1,380.25 that you were quoted last Wednesday.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woody. Ms. Boland, did you wish to respond to that, or do you want to wait and hear from other board members?
No, if I may. So then what you're saying is the impact fee would be $75.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we have to pay $550, and that is for?
That is for the water tap. That's actual today's cost to actually make that connection.
Okay. So
because that is happening today, not back in 1984.
all right. So the fact that we already have one in the name of the Homeowners Association I'm confused because I'm thinking that when Unit 5 finally does get their own water and sewer connected, that some sort of fee needs to be applied to new service versus applying those fees to old service, which we currently have.
Well, there is one meter that's providing service to both unit number 5 as well as the pool and boathouse, if I understand correctly. So one of that meter will remain in service, serving one of those two venues. You're wanting to separate them, so you're adding an additional second meter. So there will be the installation of an additional meter.
So my question though is, are you saying that should be borne by our homeowners association who right now has the meter, or the new person who will need service in, I shouldn't say new person, the current owner in Unit 5 who will now have to apply for service? I'm just trying to
Yeah, I understand.
I'm trying to look at what I think is morally right.
Sure.
I don't know what your rules are. It just seems to me that if we've already paid all those things at one point in time, which you said, that we shouldn't have to pay all those fees again to get our service separated to correct an issue that was done many years ago.
Each one of these are fees related to the new meter that you're adding. They're not related to anything that was done in the past.
All right.
What I'm doing is offering or suggesting that we allow you to install a new meter today that only applies an impact fee based on what you would have paid back in 1984.
Okay. So it's going to be up to us to talk with the unit owner and say, as a homeowners association, we don't feel we're obligated to pay this because we already have water here. It's your obligation?
Okay, that's really between the home association and the owner.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, and will you identify yourself since I don't see you?
Right. You know, I think what Mr. Woody has said makes sense, and so I will make a motion that we reduce the impact fee from $950 to $75 based on the rate that it was at the time. The rest of it is probably going to have to be handled outside of us. I don't know that we can get in the middle of that dispute, but I know that we can reduce that impact fee, so I make a motion that we do that.
There's a motion by Mr. Perkins. Is there a second?
Yes, I'd like to second that motion.
Ms. Campbell seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion?
I was just going to ask Ms. Boland, who's the owner of the Unit 5 at this time? Is it
A gentleman named Jack Goodson and his wife. I think her name is Pat. I don't really know them well.
and they're not the developer of the unit?
It's my understanding the developer of the unit of the buildings is deceased.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, we can't go back to somebody because there is nobody to go back to. All we have to do is fix what we just found. So, you know, now that we've stepped in it, we got to figure out how to rectify it so that we don't continue doing this, because that isn't the right thing.
Yeah, I would suggest that you might want to speak with a real estate attorney and see if there is a way that you can move that fee over to that unit upon the next sale. I don't know if that's legally, you know, and we can't do that as an entity. I think Dale is right. That has to be done outside of the ECUA, but I do think that you might have some way to take care of that. I'd suggest you might want to speak with a lawyer about how to make Unit 5 pay for it.
So,
Well, we're
Ms.
having
Campbell,
an association meeting on August 1st, and that's an item on there. So I think that's just going to be a simple vote of the homeowners to decide what happens with that. If it has to go further, we will probably have to do that.
And I
So,
want to
Ms.
thank you for driving all the way out here today for your association.
And Ms. Campbell, you are not suggesting that the money isn't owed until that changes hands. You're suggesting that they come up with a solution on how those refunds are made. Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any further discussion on this? We have a motion and a second. If not, Amanda, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Alexander, Dr. Alexander, Mr. Perkins, Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Chairman Benson.
Yes.
Passes 4-0.
And thank you, Ms. Boland. I'm sorry this was a sort of a convoluted process. It's an interesting mistake. I hope we don't uncover a lot of problems like this. I'm glad you caught it, and eventually it will be rectified. And thank you for coming to our meeting.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for your patience and so forth, because it has been a very trying experience
Sure.
getting through to things that I needed to get answers to. But I really appreciate everybody's help with it. And I just want to say that your engineering staff and your young lady at the front in customer service were extremely helpful, and they're to be commended for that, because this is an exasperating process for the public. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those kind words. The next item on, the next person to be heard in this open forum is Senator Broxson. And if everyone will mute your microphones while he is speaking, and then you can unmute the discussion. We're getting some background noise.
Madam Chairman, that board mic is still on, that board podium mic. That might be where some of that background noise is coming from.
I agree. I know
Can
it's
someone
recording, but they might could turn it down.
Yeah, can someone in the staff do that? Okay, Senator Broxson, welcome to our board meeting. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I am getting a little bit of a feedback, but I'll do my very best. I really appreciate the opportunity of coming before the board today. I've been taking kind of a journey around the three counties. I've met with the county commissions, several cities, several different elected people, talking about the crisis that we're in and what can we do. By the middle of next week, we probably will surpass 500,000 people confirmed with COVID-19. There's an estimate this could be 10% of the real population that has either had it or has it. And the good news is that it appears that more than 97% of us are going to survive. The problem we have is looking at the 3%. And I think if you look at the news media, there's a real debate on what is an acceptable number of people that will suffer fatality as a result of this virus. And as opposed to what happens if we shut the economy down again. And I spoke to the governor's office today. They think the second is really could create more deaths and disturbance than the first. So I believe we're going to see an economy that stays open as long as these death numbers stay within 2.5% to 3%. The question that we're all asking as elected officials, other than looking at the news, is what do we do? What can we do? I think you're going to see that we're in a much different position today than we were in April. April, we were in a full-throated panic because we didn't know what would work and what would not work. We're beginning to see in our three major hospitals here and in Milton and Okaloosa that we are having treatment that is effective. Let me just say that I believe you're going to see in the next 90 days, going to show that if you're treated early, real early, you can avoid some of the major complications with this virus. And what makes that difficult now is that in some cases, we're still taking 5 to 7 days to get the results back. I believe you're going to see it rolled out by Sacred and Baptist in the next couple of weeks, where you get a 24-hour response. That's critical to treatment. And the treatment I want to talk to you about is today, and would encourage you to consider a pledge. As leaders, we get an opportunity to have more say than the average citizen, this being an example of the people that are listening. And we get to say things that are really important. Blood is the core of this issue. We're finding better ways every day to use the plasma, which is convalescent plasma, for those who have been infected that have recovered, that can give back some plasma, and it will affect 4 people who are in a critical point of their recovery. The challenge is that we are way behind. We saw a 500% spike within the last 15 days, and we believe that spike is going to get greater. So how do you, without conscription, or if we were in a totalitarian state, we just tell people to come on in or not get paid or paid. We can't do that. We have to have volunteers. So what I'm asking you to do is to sign a pledge as an elected official and say, I am committed, health conditions prevailing, to give blood every 60 days until this pandemic is finished. We had a drive this morning at the courthouse in downtown. Just came from another drive at Midway in Santa Rosa County. People are responding. One Blood is saying that they're seeing numbers go up, but they're not enough. And what I have is a commitment, hopefully, that if we see a proportionate share of our numbers go up, then we can hopefully get them to commit to keeping that plasma within our local area. So my plea is the same I've made for the last 2 weeks, is that we have a pledge that you can go to our website, or our office will send you, if you'll send us your email, that simply says that I give blood every 60 days. Why every 60 days?
I think we lost the audio on him.
Yes, Senator Broxton, we have lost your audio. Thank you for coming, Senator Broxton. Unfortunately, we lost your audio at the last part of what you said, but I think we got the essence of your challenge to us. You want to say anything? Let's see if we can. We can't hear you. I don't know what happened. We're all muddling through this together, unfortunately. I would certainly encourage anybody who has contacted the virus to share their plasma with antibodies, and anyone who is able to give blood, that they do so. I think that's a wonderful challenge. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
Well, in addition to that, I would like to just thank Senator Broxton and our legislative delegation for getting that money through for Brownsville to expand the sewer system in that area. I know that it was a really difficult year. It's tough to do that. And how we avoided the governor's veto, I don't know. I'm sure they had something to do with that. So we really appreciate it.
And now we're getting a lot of feedback. So anyone else on the board wish to address the senator?
I think if everyone would turn off their microphone unless they are speaking besides Lois, we would do much, much better.
If nothing else, Senator Broxton, thank you again for your work on behalf of this. We all are trying to do our parts, and this is certainly an important step that you're taking. And thanks for coming to our meeting. Okay, and the next person to be recognized is, I believe, Pierce Schuessler. Are you on this call, Mr. Schuessler?
Commissioner Benson, Pierce Schuessler here. Can you hear me?
I can. You are, well, and for those of you who have not met him, he represents the lobbying group who represented us so well as Mr. Perkins recognized. So you are now recognized, Mr. Schuessler.
Madam Chairman, I just think that I don't know if there's anybody in that boardroom that can turn off that boardroom mic, but I think that might be the cause of the feedback. If it's on at the podium, I don't know whether it can be done or not, but we are getting an awful lot of feedback.
I'm just turning it down.
They're going to turn it down. One of the boardroom, I believe, the microphone. I don't know about boardroom Mac, which is a.
Just the green light is on for boardroom podium. I don't know.
We'll turn that off then.
What you're saying.
All right, Mr. Schuessler, are you available now?
Hey, Commissioner, Pierce Schuessler here, and good to see you again, along with Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Perkins and Dr. Walker. I know we met last year. Dr. Alexander and Mr. Woody, nice to meet you virtually, and one day hopefully we can shake hands and look forward to meeting you. But Bruce, I have enjoyed our phone calls with what we've had, and thanks for having us today to give the board an update, the commission an update on the 2020 session. You may have seen in the little board report blurb that I provided, the 2020 session started in mid-January and concluded in mid-March. And simply put, the budget that was passed in January, as we all know, just wasn't able to really be fully implemented in the way it was appropriated because of the decline in revenues, because of everyone canceling their trips to our awesome state this summer. And so the governor had to veto heavily, and he did. He vetoed over $1 billion to put back in the general fund, and the legislative leaders asked him to do that. Basically, the message to the legislative leaders, Senator Broxton, I don't know if he's not here, he may have left us, but we got to fund the government. We have to.
Hold on a second, we're getting lots of feedback right now, and I'm getting some blinking on the square that says boardroom Mac. I don't know what we can do about that, but that may be the source of the feedback. Sorry to interrupt you, Pierce.
No, that's okay. But
Okay,
I'm happy to report that with the leadership of the legislative delegation, including Senator Broxton and Representative Andrade, in our efforts as well, we were able to get $250,000 appropriated for the Brownsville septic to sewer sites. And I'm really happy to report that the governor approved that project. And I think the key to getting that project approved by the governor was the fact that it was in the Basin Management Action Plan as an identified project that would assist in the water quality improvements to the Bayou Chica watershed. And so with that,
I'm getting a feedback cycle again. Are the rest of you getting this feedback cycle? Yeah, gosh.
Yes, and every time we do that boardroom Mac thing, the square highlights on that. So I'm sure that whatever boardroom Mac is what's the cause.
Yeah. Mr. Woody?
Commissioner, I'll stop there and I'll also introduce Andy Palmer, a colleague at Met's Husband and Dalton, and then also Jim Dalton, I know you know, and it's good to see you all today and to just provide that brief report, and I'll take any questions if there are. And we're also happy, Commissioner, to kind of give the board a kind of where we see things going from a budget perspective or revenue perspective as we head into the 2021 session.
Sure, please go ahead and do that. I think it would be interesting for us.
Yeah, we'll obviously try to keep this short for the sake of our technical difficulties. But first, we do just want to say thank you. We've enjoyed our affiliation with you all, and we're excited to kind of see your efforts come to fruition in Tallahassee. And you really should be, everyone that was involved in this from back home should really take a victory lap this time. This is unprecedented budget triage. I mean, we're still down $1.9 billion in revenues just through this part of the year. So halfway through this budget year, we're minus 1.9 billion. We know that's only going to get worse as we continue to see tourism collapse until we have a vaccine or some guaranteed treatment for the virus. So the numbers are only going to get worse. So the fact that you all were able to secure $80 for the community this year is really remarkable. And we're happy to have been able to be a small part of that. A couple things that we need to be aware of. Obviously, every 2 years, leadership in Tallahassee changes. So we're going to be tasked with a couple things in our favor. Senator Broxson will continue to rise in seniority and be in a stronger position to continue to support the local community. The same is true on the House side as your local representatives kind of age up into the process. We will be dealing with new chairmen though in the appropriating committees, which means we'll have to kind of start our education efforts from ground zero with those folks. The good news is the staff, for the most part, will still be in place and will be familiar with the projects that we have on the table. So, but again, convincing every chairman of the merit of each project, they get presented with hundreds of them, literally hundreds of them that account for multiple millions of dollars. So that work will need to happen again. It's going to be a little different. We don't know, obviously, just like the rest of society, what that looks like. How do we advocate next year? Access to the building, if we're in our current environment, when we come back post-November into December and January committee meetings, we anticipate you probably won't have near as many face-to-face meetings. Things will have to happen outside of the Capitol building. We're all kind of waiting to see how the leadership decides what the safest course forward is. But the overall part, the big picture that matters the most is how do we get the money? Where does the money come from? What money is available? Good news is, and I think you may have seen this in the press clips and things, the governor has touted this to the Senate and House leadership. Florida's done a very good job of minding their fiscal house. We did have a lot of money in reserve, multiple billions of dollars. So as of right now, they have not come back in a special session. They've kind of said they don't feel like the need is there because, again, even as bad as $1.9 billion in lost revenue sounds, it's still only about half or not quite half of the reserve dollars set aside. And that's before the federal government potentially provides any assistance to the state to backfill budget holes. So, if we could mercifully find a vaccine that might work and kind of get things sort of back to normal, get travel coming back to our state, you might see, the end of that bleeding on the revenue side stop, and you'd be able to kind of get into next year without having to make any further draconian cuts to the budget. However, I do think, like Pierce said, any kind of marginal spending on these one-off community projects, you're going to have to be able to make a really strong case, and it's going to have impacts on multiple fronts, not just, hey, it's been a long time, we've been wanting to do this project, but you're going to have to be able to demonstrate, for example, like we did this year, there's a significant environmental impact that goes along with this project. Or in the case of this, we get the double bang for the buck, but there's also an economic development aspect to this project, right? And that's going to be a critical selling point as we try to find ways to get infrastructure projects going, get people back to work in our communities, help small businesses kind of get back up on their feet. And for example, things like this that might improve the economic outlook for a specific region in a community. That's just one more selling point that we'll have in our arsenal. But the expectation will be, again, that it's going to be incremental. If you think you need $5 million, you're going to be lucky to get 500,000 kind of deal again. So, but the good news is too that usually the legislature is consistent in where they've invested, where they've identified a project that's not been completed, but it merited being funded. You're very likely to have the odds are much more in your favor to go back the following year and kind of add on to your successes. So I'm encouraged by where we are. I think, again, we'll have to start the education process from scratch with a few of the important chairs over here, but we've got a really good story to tell, and we've already, accomplished the most significant hurdle, which is the governor's veto ban.
This is Jim Dalton. I would just add, in terms of timing, so after the November elections, the legislature will be here for just a few days when they get sworn in, and then interim committee meetings, if prior years are any indication, will begin that December. And then the legislature will be in town for another 6 weeks over the January and February timeframe. The legislative session starts in March of 21. So unlike this year where it started in January, it doesn't start until March of next year. But this is really the time when we need to work with you to identify, again, as Andy said, those key differentiators to make our project even more salient. That's the spade and shovel work that gets done now, so that when the legislature is here, really at the beginning of the year, we can hit the ground running with a detailed plan that we can share. process waits for no one. But we will not know what the 2021-22 budget looks like until later next spring. It'll be May or June of 2021 before we find out how successful we are in next year's issues. And we're glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Doughton, do you expect that many of the committees and subcommittees will be essentially the same, or do you see them being totally shuffled?
Yeah, that's a great question in the era of legislative term limits. So you get new chairs obviously a new speaker and a new Senate president with their priorities, and then new chairs every 2 years and new committee members. And while some people stay on, it really is sort of a shuffle. I mean, it's a constant education process, and Pierce articulated, and Andy did as well, the staff becomes just pretty critical in that term limited environment. And we will not know who sit on those committees until at least December. Now, there's always a Tallahassee parlor game. You can sort of assume who's going to chair, the right appropriation subcommittee, but we've been proven wrong a few times on that as well. You do get a sense in the era of term limit. So it's who's sort of moving up, who you see as a future leader. Hopefully he or she become a committee chair, but you do. It's funny, when term limits came in, I thought it was going to be really difficult, but you really can't see who the leaders are, and they emerge pretty early. And that's, some of the things we spend our time on.
So in that context, I was thinking it might be worthwhile for us to send something to those people who were on that committee who might be emerging leaders in that area, to let them know our appreciation for what they did. And the other question is, does the incoming speaker have a high value for education or environment? Where do we see the incoming speaker on issues of ours?
Sure, Andy, why don't I let you take that?
Sure, and that's a great question. And I will tell you that, so we were actually with Senator Kelly Stargell just earlier today, and she is presumed by a lot, and I think it's a pretty open secret that she will be the next appropriations chair on the Senate side, under President Wilton Simpson. On the House side, we've got Speaker Designate Chris Sprouse, who will be assuming the mantle over there. Interestingly enough, Chairman Sprouse has not really articulated a strong agenda where we kind of had the last two speakers were particularly focused on healthcare reform and attacking what they dubbed the healthcare industrial complex, kind of taking on hospitals and the establishment there. This speaker has been a little more reserved, and I guess outlining what his specific proposals are. Worth noting, though, environmental issues will be of a concern to him. He's a coastal member from Pinellas County, so he understands water quality issues. They've had some sewer issues there as well, where they've had some septic or some sewer discharges out into the bay. So that's going to be top of mind for him for sure. Criminal justice reform has been one of his issues, but he's a former state prosecutor, so he brings a different perspective. But that's been one that he's been involved in very personally and directly. The other issue that we can't lose sight of doesn't affect the budget for us, but remember this is a redistricting cycle. So we will have concluded the new census, which will lead us into redistricting. So that's going to be one of the more dominant issues in Tallahassee as well, just all the political intrigue that surrounds that. But I think what we need to be prepared about is, from a budgetary fiscal perspective, it is all going to be about budget austerity. And that's what Kelly Stargell kind of articulated to us. She said, hey, you guys just need to remember I'm a limited government conservative anyway, and this is going to be my time to shine, right? If ever there was a time for government to shrink when we don't have revenues, it's going to be now. So I think we should expect that to be kind of the overriding theme. And I do think pandemic response is going to be, the funding, what can the state do to be better prepared? How do we backfill some of the holes? That's where you're going to see a lot of the extra resources targeted. But good news is tourism dominates all of that. The largest economic driver. It will be one of the easiest places to get fixed. I think we saw that post 9/11. Once we got people over the fear of air travel and all, Florida rebounded relatively quickly and well. Same thing here. I think once people feel safe traveling again, we'll see that come back. And of course, protecting our natural resources, protecting our environment, protecting our waterways, all of those things are critical to that. And so we will always be kind of the top of the stack in those issue discussions.
Okay, thank you. And, I'm just suggesting that, and I don't need to tell you all anything about lobbying, but just anything that we as a board can do to make our case to the upcoming leaders and to say our thank yous to those who served us and made this possible, we'd like to do that. So, if you could make some suggestion as to with whom we should make contact, I think we would all be glad to send personal notes to those people.
Point well taken.
They still work. They very much
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would counsel, and I talked to Pierce about this just earlier today, and it sounds like you guys are doing this. And the other part is just execute well, right? So you have at the staff level, make sure that DEP is being responsive, that we're executing contracts, that we're showing an earnestness and a willingness to engage, spend our money, have it. And you'd be amazed how many people appropriation, and we check back in 8 months, 9 months, and they've had some bureaucratic roadblock that they didn't maybe tell us about, and things just kind of lingering. So it sounds like I think DEP is very engaged, and hopefully we won't run into anything like that. But it astonishes me sometimes the things we might take for granted. Hey, usually the money's there, grab it off the table while you can and get going.
And Bruce, this is Pierce. Let us know if you have problems with that. I'm happy to reach out to those DEP contacts. Worked with them in the past, so let us know.
Okay. And I assume you and Woody will be in contact, Mr. Woody will be in contact as well, so that if you see any, landmines, that you will alert him and we will all be able to act quickly. Because we certainly would like this trend to continue, and we thank you for your wonderful success. Any other board members wish to ask questions?
Madam Chairman, Walker.
Dr. Walker, you're recognized.
Thank you. Andy, you said that I think you said there was a 1.9 billion revenue shortfall in the current fiscal year to date. What is the projected shortfall for the entire fiscal year?
That's a good question. If I recall this correctly, I think that's the next estimate we're about to see. I think that there's an Office of Economic and Demographic Research, EDR. The state economist oversees that office, and I think they're being tasked right now. The Federal Reserve, each of the Fed regions just made their beige book recommendations, so they're going through that, compiling the data that came out of the Atlanta office as it affects Florida, and obviously halfway through the year we're getting a better handle on unemployment numbers. The PPP loans have ended now. We're going to find out just exactly how many small businesses are not going to come back post that. So I think we will have an update that we'll share with you all as soon as we get a firm number in the next month or so.
Okay, thank you.
We need to hope there's not a hurricane. That's the these reserve dollars that the legislature is spending to patch the budget hole are really set aside for hurricanes. So we just have to keep our fingers crossed.
As I think a tropical storm is hurtling towards South Florida right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have a question.
Ms. Campbell?
I know last year there was a bill, a movement to eliminate spray fields. And I found out about it through staff, and I think staff found out about it through DEP. But I talked to Doug Broxson about it. I was over there. We went to the Senate floor and talked to the maker of the bill. And he assured us that, they would remember Northwest Florida needs our spray fields, unlike, South Florida. So I just would like us to keep an eye on that this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell.
One of the things the legislature tries to do a good job of is, we are a state of city-states, and you cannot have a unilateral policy for Miami-Dade County and North Florida. And it's tough. And there are a lot of folks from down there, a lot of legislators from down there, and very important sometimes to come and say, whoa, we're in the panhandle.
Right. Well, be sure to alert us when things like that come up too, Jim. Thank you. Anyone else on the board wish to speak? Well, thank you all for all that you did and for the largesse that you shared, and thanks for spending some time with us at today's meeting. I hope we'll hear from you again as things progress, and I hope it will be in person next time.
Absolutely. Thank you all. for your
Thank
time.
you.
Okay, the next issue, that concludes our open forum unless we have anyone else who has asked to be recognized. Is there anyone? The next item is the Recycle Star. We're still doing that again, but instead of drawing from a cup the numbers of the people who have excelled in recycling, I'm going to ask Mr. Perkins to pick a number between 1 and 19, and whatever number you pick will be the one who gets the Recycle Star Award. So Mr. Perkins, pick your number.
3.
Number 3. And Amanda, who is number 3? Is your mic on, Amanda? I'm not getting any audio. Mr. Woody, has Amanda said who is our Recycle Star winner? I don't get any audio from her.
Yes, she did. She's been speaking.
Chairman Benson, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, perfect. Number 3 is Art Moore.
Art Moore. Okay, so you will take all the balloons and all the prizes and the checks to Mr. Moore with our thanks. We come now to approval of the minutes from the board meeting of June 23rd, 2020. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I move approval.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second, Walker.
Dr. Walker seconds it. Amanda, if you will call for the vote. Okay.
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
and Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
It passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item is the Special Citizens Advisory Committee of July 14th, 2020. And if we'll just combine that with item 9, the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting of July 21, 2020. Ms. Campbell, you're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, the members were all present on July 14th, with the exception of Mr. Alexander and Mr. Ponson. The item E was each department went over the operating budget discussions for year 2021, fiscal year 2021. The following department directors presented to the Citizen Advisory Committee their goals, targeted goals, objectives, accomplishments, budget, and work plans. Mr. Bruce Woody for administration, Ms. Patty Sheldon for finance, Mr. John Don for information technology, Ms. Kimberly Scruggs for human resources, Mr. Stacy Hayden for engineering, Mr. Randy Rudd for shared services, Mr. Gabe Brown for customer service, Mr. Jerry Piscopo for maintenance, construction, Mr. Randy Rudd for sanitation and material recycling facility, Mr. Bruce Woody and Mr. Stacy Hayden for the capital improvement program. And then Mr. Hayden provided us a detailed presentation on inflow and infiltration program on the 14th as well. We continued on the 21st with Mr. Brian Reed for regional services, Mr. Randy Sears for water reclamation, and Mr. Don Palmer for water production. I just again would like to thank all of the staff and the CAC for sitting through almost 4 hours of budget workshop this year. Item G was the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. The recommendation was made by Ms. Benson, second by Mr. Kimball, that the board approve the FY 2021 proposed budget and with inclusion of 60,000 to contract for the lobbyist services and 80,000 for cost of service rate study. The committee voted 10-0 in favor. Item H was award a contract for site preparation, construction of slabs, offboarding for Muldoon granular activated carbon GAC filter vessels. Recommendation was made by Mr. Kimball, seconded by Ms. Ritz, that the board waive the formal bidding process and award the contract to Utility Service Company, the contractor providing the lowest quote in the amount of $280,715.18, with funding transferred from CW 115 Humphrey Well replacement to CW 0006 Muldoon and Avondale GAC treatment. The committee voted 10-0 in favor. Item I was the extension of a chemical contract for sodium hypochlorite or bleach. Motion was made by Mr. Kimball, seconded by Mr. Inkle, that the board extend the contract for sodium hypochlorite with DPC Enterprises in the amount of 0.6640 per gallon for the first of a 2 one-year option to extend, with the pricing as agreed to by the supplier with the approval of the ECUA board, and authorized payment from the appropriate line item with the operating budget. The committee voted 10-0 in favor. And I would like to move items G through I for approval.
Ms. Campbell, can we take the budget separately and
Yes,
just
ma'am.
do H and I?
We can
So-
hold the budget, move items H through I for approval.
Is there a second? I don't hear anyone calling for a second, so someone unmute and second the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins has seconded the motion. If there's no other discussion, please vote. Ms. Amanda, will you call the roll?
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
and Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
And it passes 5-0.
Thank you. You're recognized again, Ms. Campbell.
Thank you. And let me get back to where I was. Okay, I would like to open discussion of the item G, the 2021 proposed budget.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, and I will also ask Mr. Woody to assist me on this, but I have a request for, in my district, for an expansion of a sewer line manhole, as I understand it, from U Street to property on T and Lakeview. This is an affordable housing project referred to as the Lakeview project that has been submitted by a developer in my district. And of course, there is a cost associated with that. But I think the intention here is that under the, as a sewer expansion project, that there be some consideration made in adding to the budget amount for that work being done. But I want to lean to our executive director, who I think can articulate, because I've been in communication with him, who can articulate a little bit better than I can. And then at some point, I'm going to ask the board to help me to make a motion around this, because this is all very new to me, and I want to make sure I'm doing it right and equitable. Mr. Wood, please.
Mr. Woody, you're recognized.
Mr. James Reeves has contacted, I believe, a number of you with a concern for pursuing a project in the area of Lakeview Avenue near U and T Street. Actually, the portion that would be being asked of ECUA This means extending gravity sewer service along Lakeview Avenue between U and T Street. That gets up to the property line at which point then his development will pick it up from there. The project scope is a housing project, many homes in that area. It's a little unclear to me the exact number of homes. We try to help assist developer with some idea of what the scope of cost is, and so that the board could make an informed decision on the request that he's making of you. We did do some limited work out in the field, took a few shots and elevations to determine whether it's headed and what the scope of that work might be. We're of the opinion that it is a little over $100,000 worth of construction. By the time we add contingency and some design and surveying work, that number is more like 125. Small projects have the ability to change more than large projects, so I'd say an appropriate placeholder for the project would probably be $150,000. By our usual administrative review would be considered a developer project. There have been projects like this that have also been viewed by the board in the past as sewer extension projects. So from a policy perspective, I think your decision points are probably whether this is a project that should or should not be supported by the board, and sewer service to help lower and defray the cost of this project. That would largely depend on whether you view it as a project or not. As you know, quite a few SEP projects have been added and discussed over the last few years. If it would be of assistance, our staff has had an interest in some time and have an opportunity to make a presentation to the board, have an update on SEP projects in general, so we can get some further policy feedback from the board on how you approach and prioritize those. It might be an appropriate time to be doing that anyway, and certainly in addition to having this this recent request. So, first request, or you can possibly defer it, make a larger presentation on SEP projects where we are, and then have a larger policy.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. I'm getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if other members are. There are two frames in the boardroom. One is boardroom podium and one is boardroom Mac. I wonder if we need both of those. Maybe we could turn that mic and even that camera off unless you all need it for some function. Because we're just getting a huge amount of feedback. And I don't hear you at all, Mr. Woody.
And if everybody could have their mic off unless they're actually speaking, I know we might have to have it on to be recognized, but with all the mics on, it might be contributing to that.
And Mr. Woody, I see that you're speaking, but we don't hear you at all.
Turning that one back on, Stacy. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. Let me explain the two. You're seeing boardroom Mac, and you're also seeing boardroom podium. The boardroom podium is the means by which you hear Amanda and myself and anybody else that speaks at the podium.
Gotcha.
That needs to stay on for that reason.
Okay.
Mac, short for Macintosh computer, I believe that's in the back room. Although that shows a live mic, in reality, that's actually a inline hard line that goes to our internal system in order to record this. So there is no open mic associated with that, even though it's
okay. Is it possible to turn off the cameras associated with those two? It will give me two more places to see board members.
We can turn it on, but I believe you'll just get a black screen, so I don't think it'll give you more real estate for view.
Okay, we'll try it.
It'll still show up as a black line or as a black box.
When someone goes off, I typically see another person, but that's fine. Let me respond. I think this project that Dr. Alexander describes and that you described, Mr. Woody, is certainly valuable. I think we've all been talking a lot about infill and the importance of affordable housing. I'm not sure that I'm ready to bump somebody else out of line right now for this until we get a little more information and perhaps have a presentation on sewer expansion, neighborhood sewer expansion, and related issues. I think that this one is fairly easy to slide in at some point because the dollar amount is not huge, but I'd rather consider it in the context of all of our sewer expansion. But I'm certainly willing to listen to other members of the board on this issue.
I had a question too. This Mr. Reeves was the attorney for the owner, correct? The owner is a nonprofit organization, I do believe.
Yes, that is.
Okay, yeah, I think I heard about this on the county commission board, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
That's an important point. Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I think part of the reason that Dr. Alexander is bringing it up now is that he's, he won't be here after the next election because he's not running for re-election, and so he wants to make sure that it's included. And I admire him and applaud him for that. And I think for the service that he's given and everything that, it's 165,000 is what I thought I heard. Is that correct?
150.
150. Well, I mean, we're going to have that in sweepings or project contingencies or somewhere in the budget, and it may even be, in the sewer expansion line, when another project comes in lower than anticipated or something. So I think we can come up with 150,000 in the context of the budget we've already approved, and I will commit to Dr. Alexander that we'll get that project done one way or another with the budget that we're approving today.
I will do the same, Mr. Perkins. I think the affordable housing is very important right now.
Okay, so I think you will have the votes. I just counted 3 just then without weighing in myself, so I think it's fine. But let's make sure we consider it when we do have the discussion of sewer expansion, so that it's part of that context. But I agree that this is very important for the board. Thank you for that.
Madam
Okay,
Chairman,
yes, Dr. Walker.
Did my light not show that I was?
No, you're just going to have to interrupt because I don't see any light. Yeah.
All right. Well, I wanted to say that to make a commitment to approve some project, whether even a relatively small project is only $150,000, would be a deviation from our regular procedure. Staff needs to evaluate projects, both our financial department and our engineering department and so forth. And I think it's particularly questionable whether this would qualify as a sewer expansion program, since we're talking about construction that hasn't even been built yet, apparently. Sewer expansion programs go for old neighborhoods. So I think we should keep those ideas in mind as we look toward considering this in the future. I'd be more than happy to help to participate in considering it in the near future.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Does anyone else have anything else regarding the overall budget that they wish to say?
Walker again?
Yes, you're recognized.
Thank you. Most of you heard my reservations about the budget. I seem to have become the most conservative budgeteer on the board, in sharp contrast to most of my past history. But most of you heard it before, and I don't see any need to go into it again. And overall, it's a good budget for conventional times. I'm not sure it's a good budget for these unconventional times, but I'll be happy to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Any other board members regarding the budget?
Cedric.
Yes,
Yeah,
Dr. Alexander.
Yeah, just for my clarification. So what would be next step in regard to this piece that I introduced regarding the affordable housing? What would be the next step here again? I just want
Well, sure. I think one next step is we are going to have a presentation on sewer expansion that this was going to be in the context. And Mr. Woody, will that presentation be before the upcoming November election?
Yes, we'll make an effort to do that so that we can get that in a timely manner.
So we'll discuss it in that context, and that's when we would take a vote. That would be my recommendation.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you all.
Anyone else on the budget? I do have a few remarks. And the first is, I want to thank Ms. Campbell, Mr. Woody, and all of the staff for doing the budget this way. I think this is the first time since I've been on the board that the entire board and the CAC has turned over every stone and looked at this organization and our budget completely. And it was time consuming, but I think it was very well spent. So thanks for your leadership on that, Ms. Campbell, and for your commitment to it, Mr. Woody. When we adopt the budget, we typically think of all of the dollars that we're allocating, but I think that part of what we're adopting when we adopt the budget is also those goals and projected accomplishments that the staff presented. It's not just dollars. We're making a commitment to do a number of things, and I hope that that's the way this budget is perceived. It's the most important policy item that we do as a board. There were several items that were brought up, and this is certainly not exclusive in the context of the budget, that I particularly want to just mention because it's what I heard, and we didn't act on these things separately. So I just want to bring them up because I want to make sure everybody heard what I heard. One was the idea that maybe we would look at suspending FOG fees for restaurants who have had a good history without violations during COVID. And I think we had asked staff to come back to us to let us know what that dollar figure would be, but we would like a report on that. That was one item. We looked at the idea, we talked about the idea of benchmarking customer satisfaction, and that would be satisfaction of our ratepayers for our services, contractors who are also our customers, and people who apply for permits. Whether this is a true benchmark survey or something less formal, I don't know, but I think that this is, again, something that we need in order to become a more customer-friendly organization. So again, I'd like for staff to come back with us with a suggestion on how we move on that. There was also some question about the notification after sewer spill, if this is something that can be improved. And I think that we would like a presentation on that. And I think that is all that I highlighted that I wanted to make sure that we, we also wanted a policy on laterals and whether that needed to be updated. Does anyone else have any issue that came up during the budget that they want to make sure that there's follow-up on?
Just that we would end of the line flush outs, the end of the line flush outs.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Campbell. Anyone else? Okay, so we have a motion to accept the budget.
And if you don't mind, could I give a summary on that because it didn't really.
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
And
yes.
So in summary, the rate increase is requested for water and wastewater is 0. No rate increase, and 2% rate increase is requested for sanitation. Therefore, every customer with 2 90-gallon containers will see a net monthly increase of 45 cents per month or $12 a week. So just wanted to make sure that I got that on the record.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. And you made the motion. Was there a second for the 2021 proposed budget?
Not yet.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Was that Mr. Perkins? Who made the second?
It was Perkins.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Amanda, if you'll call for the vote.
Mr. Perkins, Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
and Dr. Walker. I'm sorry, Dr. Alexander.
Yes.
And it passes 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Does that conclude your report?
It does. Thank you very much.
Thanks for all you did. Okay, the next item is item 10B, sanitary sewer collection master plan. Do I have the right one? No, I'm sorry, 10A. 2019 water service renewals annual contract extension. The recommendation is that the board approve the extension of the contract with Evans Contracting, Inc. for CIP project RW 818-2019, water service renewals for a period of 1 year. Sorry, is there a motion?
Perkins moves the recommendation.
Walker seconds.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Amanda, if you'll call for the vote.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
and
Yes.
Dr. Walker.
Yes.
And it passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item is 2020 sanitary sewer collection system master plan. Mr. Woody, if you will.
The last master plan that this organization has undertaken and the results of have been used for a number of years is fairly dated, considerably dated actually, 1997. A lot has occurred in this organization since that time. Most certainly the additional pump stations, relocation of the wastewater treatment plant, and other upgrades over time. What is further driving our need to update that master plan is also the tremendous growth that's going on associated with Navy Federal and other growth to the northwest. Master plan is a program by which, with the assistance of an outside consultant, we go through and clarify, update the capacity of the wastewater system that we have. Independent from that, certainly we have I&I issues, but we need to have a clearer understand of the capacities of not only the collection portions of our system, but the pump stations, the force mains, know where our strengths and weaknesses are. That also creates a file for us going forward as other development occurs to be sure that we can stay ahead of that growth and identify locations where we need to partner with development as it occurs to upsize those locations so that we can provide the service going on into the future. So what's proposed is a sewer collection master plan, and we're asking that to be proceed with something called Volkert Incorporated under an existing continuing services contract that we have that dates back to 2018. There's $250,000 in CIP project RI 700, which is where the I&I our inflow infiltration funds are available. Today's recommendation for this line item.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion and I'd like to speak.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, Cedric.
It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Campbell, you're recognized.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Woody and Stacy Hayden. This has been a long time coming, and I'm very happy to see this master plan go into place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Anyone else? If not, let's vote on the master plan.
Let Walker say a word, please.
Sure.
Thank
You're
you.
recognized, Dr. Walker.
I love master planning. Anything long-term planning, that's the way to go. That's the way to do it. And so I'm very happy to see this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. You know, government gets a bad rap for doing lots of studies and putting them on the shelf. We're the opposite, but we don't do these plans very often, but I'm sure this is going to be very used and user-friendly. Okay, now we can vote. Amanda?
Ms. Campbell,
A very heartily yes.
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
and Chairman Benson.
Yes.
And it passes 5-0.
Item 10C is award of chemical contracts for aluminum sulfate liquid alum. And the recommendation is that the board award the contract for aluminum sulfate to the low bidder, Southern Ionics, Inc., in the amount of $269.12 per dry ton for 1 year, with 2 one-year options to extend, with the agreement of Southern Ionics, Inc. and the ECUA board, and authorized payments for the appropriate line items from the operating budgets of the 3 water reclamation facilities. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move staff recommendation.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Walker seconds.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, please vote. Amanda?
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
and Ms. Campbell.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Yes, thank you. Item 10D is CWRF tertiary filter and chlorine contract chamber bypass FEMA grant agreement. Mr. Woody, if you will outline this for us.
You all will remember in April of 2014, there was a tremendous local rain event. Definitely an outlier in the terms of what is normally experienced here in this area, but still it created a tremendous problem at the Central Water Reclamation Facility. Those excessive flows completely overwhelmed our tertiary filter complex system and our chlorine contact chamber. As a result of that, that section of the plant was actually offline. We've had conversations with the Florida Division of Emergency Management, as well as FEMA, and through the hard work of staff, we have been able to obtain a hazard mitigation grant program grant, and the recommendation here is to accept the 75% funding that would go with our 25% match to create a bypass system that effectively gives staff the flexibility and the option during tremendous events to bypass that portion of the system and run it directly to our reject storage in order to avoid damaging equipment. That does 2 things. It allows us to continue maximum efficiency, gets the excess line, which we can pump back to the headworks of the plant and run back through the plant after the event is over, and allows us to restore our systems, get back into function more quickly. It's a wonderful opportunity with 75% funding. It comes certainly with my recommendation.
Is there a motion?
I so move.
Dr. Walker, is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Well, it's rare that we get 75% of a project funded through somebody other than our ratepayers. I think thank yous need to go to Brian Reed and Jerry Piscopo for their work in securing this grant. Keep those coming, if you will. Any other
Amen.
discussion? If there's no further discussion, let's vote on this item.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
and Dr. Alexander.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Item 10E is recommended water and wastewater systems budget sources and usage, and F is recommended sanitation materials recycling facility budget sources and uses. Was this not covered by our vote on during the citizen advisory report, Mr. Woody?
What you're used to seeing on an annual basis is this kind of resolution followed by a preliminary rate setting resolution. You'll notice that there is one for sanitation, which follows the item on page 31. There is not one following water and wastewater systems, however, because our recommended change for next year is 0% or effectively no change. So that's the distinction that's important. I would like to add a couple comments, though, starting on page 30. You'll remember in our earlier discussions that one of the initiatives I asked for your consideration in pursuing is reflected in this document. At the very beginning, unrestricted reserves, you'll see at the top of the column is 3.5 million. That has been a common practice in past years. Here's a budget that represents about 2.2% of operating expense. Ideally, when you go to market to sell bonds or with outside funding sources, one of the things they very closely look at is your reserves and certainly your existing debt as well. What they would like to see in an ideal world, and there is no such thing as an ideal world, but they would like to see as much as even 2 months worth of operating. I would certainly like to see us realistically target 1 month. We can talk about getting to 2 months eventually. But that's even 1 month is 8.3% of your operating expenses. Right now we're sitting at 2.2. My recommendation and what's included in the budget you just approved, if you drop to the bottom of that same column, you'll see unrestricted reserves increasing to 4.5 million. That's an additional $1 million, but all that really gets you is from 2.2% of operating to 2.8% of operating. So even large accomplishment, it may take us a little while, but I think that it's a worthwhile venture and certainly appreciate your support in doing that.
Thank you for your initiative on that, Mr. Woody. Again, do we need to vote on these two items since we need to vote separately on?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Can we combine the vote for the?
Sure.
Okay. I'd like to vote yes
Okay.
to, I'd like to move E and the resolution. And I have comments.
Okay. You want EF and the resolution?
Yes.
Okay. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Dr. Alexander, and you're recognized, Ms. Campbell.
And I just want to thank Woody for pointing that out, that we do need to keep our reserves up in sanitation. And the main reason, I mean, we just now are embarking on hurricane season. And for those of us that have lived here for a long time, I think it's interesting that Mr. Woody is the one that wanting to bolster our reserves, someone not even from here. So get ready, because you know, we see a lot of storms. Even if we don't get a direct hit, we see a lot of storms that blow down a lot of trees, and we are going to need those reserves, because even if we do get money from FEMA, as you know, it takes a while to actually see that money from FEMA. So we have to take care of it, and so we have to have those reserves. I would also like to see a little bit more healthy reserves next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Dr. Walker, did you want to weigh in on this?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's kind of you to allow me to do so, or to invite me. Um, uh, I just would be delighted if ECUA could increase that reserve percentage a little bit every year for the next 10 years. That would make a big difference. I do think it's going to be a tough thing to do because of the economic times that we're going to have for a few years. But we're doing it now based on money that basically came in before the economic recession began, as I understand it. Hopefully we'll be able to continue, even if just tiny amounts, but let's set a goal that we'll make an increase in this percentage figure every year. Thank you.
And Dr. Walker, thank you for advocating for that for many, many years. Anyone else wish to be recognized? Okay, we're voting on items E, F, and G. Amanda?
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
and Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
And it passes 5-0.
Thank you all for all of the work on that. Our next item is item 11A, the monthly budget to actual report as of June 30th, 2020. And is Ms. Sheldon there to speak to us? I see her coming. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What you have before you on page 39 is the operational expenses for the water wastewater fund. And you can see at the bottom the percentage of year that this is June 30, so 75%, we're at 71% of our operating costs. This is just the operating costs. I haven't included the debt service and the capital on that. We are tracking at 75% on those. The revenue for the water wastewater fund is tracking along with the budget, so I issued there. The next page, page 40, is the sanitation fund. Again, this is the operating expense line items. So we're at about 79% total on that fund, but you can see some of the different line items are way over the 75%. Again, that goes to the things we've talked about: overtime, repair and maintenance for equipment and vehicles, gas and oil, and things like that. So that's what's putting us over. On the revenue side for sanitation, we are tracking a little bit higher than budget, so that's a good thing. It's probably due to growth that wasn't accounted for when we did the budget. So on our revenue side for sanitation, we're a little bit higher than 75%. For the MERV, the sales of recyclables, it's only tracking about 62% of the budget. So we are going to be short revenue in the MERV, unless the market value in the next 3 months skyrockets, which we would all like to happen. You know how that plays out in the last quarter. We did get some insurance money from the settlement on that case. So from a cash flow standpoint, they did get a little extra money from that, but the revenue from the sale of recyclables needs to come up a little bit in order to meet all of our expenses. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Board members, do you have questions?
Where does that money show up from the, is it under the risk management?
So,
No, I haven't presented the revenue side to you. This is,
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
so I didn't include a revenue report here.
Okay.
But it'll come in as a miscellaneous revenue from pension settlement. And so it'll, when we do the financial statements, which I'll present next month, I have the quarterly financial statements. So you'll see both the revenue and expense side. And
it'll show up under miscellaneous. Okay, thank you.
Madam
anyone
Chairman?
else?
Yes,
Yes.
Larry Walker.
Dr. Walker?
Yes. One little question about the can delivery program or its budget. I looked for an item in the list on for can delivery. I understand it's a separate division now of sanitation department. But I looked for the information, I didn't see it. But of all the areas of our operation, the one that I've been receiving the most complaints about lately, or the most vociferous complaints, has been can delivery. And I was just looking here, hoping to see information about what kind of budget we have going for that, but I see we don't. But so I guess I'm just wanting to say that to Mr. Woody and others, that this is an area where I think we need to look at the budget. We may not have enough manpower. We may not have enough cans purchased. One lady waited 10 to 11 days to get a can delivered. And she said it was filthy. So it was obviously a very used, said it was a very used looking can. And so apparently we didn't have any new cans to deliver. Just an area where I think we need to pay some attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Anyone else have any questions regarding these budget numbers?
No, but I would like to thank Dr. Walker for bringing that up. I've had quite a few calls on can delivery as well.
Thank you, Ms. Shelton.
I was just going to say the can delivery costs are in the residential operations, the Scambia residential operations. In our accounting records, we don't have it broken down to the detail of, just the can maintenance, but I can certainly get with Randy and see if he's got some detail on that.
Thank you.
Okay, we move to the executive director's report. Mr. Woody, you are recognized, and I'm going to turn off my mic.
I just have a few items to mention. We continue to have our discussions with grant sources. We're continuing to work on our NRDA grant on Pensacola Beach. As you'll remember, we completed a project. I guess it predates me, so I don't have firsthand knowledge. About a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe even, where we completed a construction of a tank on Pensacola Bay intended for eventual use as part of our reuse program. We've continued those discussions with granting agencies, and I look forward to being able to bring back an agreement that contemplates completing possibly up through 4 phases of that overall project. The next important section would be completing our transmission main over to the tank and pump station there. Following phase then to provide supply and distribution to the medians and some of our large users. Additional phase would also take in the direction of Fort Pickens, as well as other areas to the east, maybe even headed as far as Portofino. The agreement that will be providing calls for a commitment, however, on our behalf to at least commit through phase 4. That would be a $1.7 million commitment overall. But that comes in conjunction with nearly $4.9 million in funds for this overall project. Project to us in that it can provide a successfully, we believe, we haven't seen the draft agreement yet, but we believe that we're having some success in our negotiations to have a kind of a circuit breaker in the agreement, stating that we would only take the project phases as far as we have adequate supply. There's a very real chance that at least seasonally that we may have more, if it's successful, more demand than we actually have supply available. So most certainly through phase 3, possibly well through phase 4 as well. We'll have more information when we have that grant to be able to present. Second item to mention, although I mentioned this in a board report, I think it's important to mention for the general public and or media who may be watching as well. We had a recent review of our ratings through Standard & Poor's. There are 3 major rating agencies out there, and I believe they're all pretty busy with municipalities and other public entities due to the impact that COVID-19 has had on all of those entities for revenue flow. So they came and approached us since they had done a ratings review for our last issuance a few years ago in 2015. Most of the questions were pretty loaded up as it relates to what impacts the amendments weathered fairly well, and we provided some good information. And I'm pleased to report that they maintained our A stable rating as a result of the review. Last report, and is looks good for us as an organization, and certainly bodes well for a board that demonstrates your conservative approach to finance and operation of this organization. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Woody. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Woody?
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Walker.
Dr. Walker.
I could not hear some of what was said, both about the Pensacola Beach irrigation system and about the Standard & Poor's rating. So if he could put that in writing, and those 2 items in writing in his next weekly report, or in any other fashion, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
We'll do that.
Clearly, we have an audio problem in the boardroom that a lot of times we're getting so much feedback. I had the same problem. Maybe our IT staff can look at how that is working and see if we can smooth that out, I hope. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Woody? Okay, it is time for the attorney's report, and you'll notice that Mr. Beasley is not here. He's replaced by Mr. Clark, also of the firm. So, Mr. Clark, you're recognized for the attorney's report.
Thank you, Ms. Benson. I don't have anything to report at this time.
Okay. I do have one legal question for you, Mr. Clark. I need to report a sunshine law violation. And in the past, what we have done is cured the violation by reporting it in an open meeting. There was a text that Ms. Campbell sent to Ms. Boland regarding the issue we heard about today. And Ms. Boland forwarded that text to me, which is in violation of the sunshine law. And I simply want to report that. Nothing nefarious happened, and it didn't affect any outcomes, but it was technically a violation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have questions for the attorney? If not, we go to item, sorry, I'm juggling everything. Item 14A, unfinished business, and I did have an item of unfinished business. At our last board meeting in June, I brought up the issue of minority recruitment, mentoring, and contracting, and there was some discussion of this, but I think this issue is important enough for us to take official action if you are willing to do so. I can't make a motion, but particularly in light of losing Mr. Brown as head of customer service, that we don't have any top spots for anyone of color in this organization. And I think we need to work to change that. So what I recommend is that the ECUA assess the current status of minorities in our workplace by department and review minority compensation vis-a-vis overall salaries. Where do they fall? And develop a long-range plan for recruitment, mentoring from within, and anything else that will help change that profile somewhat. I would also ask that we review our bid documents to ensure that minority contractor and subcontractor sections of our bid forms are being followed, that we're not just giving lip service, but it is given a value in the outcome of these bids, and that a plan for this, or the beginnings of an outline of a plan, be presented to the board by our October meeting. And I put that out for discussion, and if anyone is willing to make that motion, I invite that.
Madam Chair, Cedric Alexander.
You're
So let
recognized.
me make a couple of remarks and respond to that, and not just based on the fact that obviously I'm a black man, but based on the fact it's just the right thing to do. And someone who serves in a very conservative capacity in terms of my thoughts and ideas and upbringing, one thing I'm very clear about, particularly in this era that we live in at this very moment, that I think is very conscious to everyone, and that's around the whole issues around social justice. We being on this board don't escape that no more than anyone else. So I want to applaud you for bringing that up. And I certainly do support the idea that we look within, but I would also take it a step further. And I think Mr. Woody and I had this conversation when he first came on, and he committed to, if I remember correctly, Mr. Woody, of being open and also being assertive in trying to pursue and make sure that we have a balanced workforce that is not discriminatory to anyone. I don't care who it is. And more importantly than that, yes, I think it's important that we look within to see what our talent is. But I would probably anecdotally believe that we don't have a lot of people sitting in positions that would be up next, because historically, I don't think that has been the case. So I think we have to be willing also to aggressively, assertively, to be able to look outside of ECUA and even outside of this community, particularly when we're talking engineers, particularly when we're talking people in administrative leadership positions. And I would certainly be there now and after my time is up to assist Mr. Woody, as I'm quite sure all of us on this board would be. So I think that's important, but I also would like to see in that October report are also some initiatives that were clearly outlined. What are some strategies in which we can start moving in that direction? Because if we're looking for engineers, and it's my understanding we have very few of color, we got to look beyond the places that we know, because there are a number of institutions out there, particularly historically black colleges and universities, that graduate extraordinary engineering students every day. So I think we have to avail ourselves to the broad range of opportunities that are out there. But equally as important to what I'm saying in place we are in terms of where we are in this whole piece around social justice, I think it becomes very important too that we make sure that we balance the playing field for everyone, because I do not want to see anyone, I don't care, black, white, men, women, disabled, whatever of the diverse populations in which I think we're trying to explore new and rich talent. I don't want anyone to feel slighted in any kind of way, but we're in a very different place in this country today, and we're moving in a very different place in this country today. And I think we have to do our part. Appreciate you, Madam Chair, bringing this up to the board without me having to do so, because it's very important that my constituents and not my constituents, but my colleagues take on the responsibility and understand it just as clearly and understand the importance of it just as much as anyone else. And I want to applaud everyone on this board for taking on that type of attitude. And I certainly want to thank Mr. Woody, who took that on and understood the importance of it from me when he took this job. So that's all I have to say about that. Thank you very much, Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Dr. Alexander.
Madam
Is anyone
Chair?
willing to make that a motion? Yes,
Madam Chair.
Dr. Walker.
Yes. Yes. I think this is a very important matter, and that indeed we should take an action such as you suggested. I thought Dr. Alexander made the motion, but if the chair would would state for us what she would like to hear in a motion, I'll be happy to make it.
Okay, and it was rather long, Dr. Walker. It was that the ECUA assess the current status of minorities in our workplace by department and review also minority compensation vis-a-vis overall salaries, and then develop a long-range recruitment and mentoring plan, that we also review bid documents and ensure that the minority contractor, subcontractor sections are being followed, not just as lip service, but as a valued part of the contract. This is part of the outcome measure when we award contract, and that the plan be presented to the board by the October meeting. That was my recommendation.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve that language as a matter of board policy.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Anyone? Okay, let's vote then. Amanda?
Chairman Benson,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Perkins,
Yes.
Dr. Walker,
Yes.
and it passes 5-0.
Thank you so much. Okay, the next, that was the only unfinished or new business that we had under board communication. Mr. Perkins, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I got the news that Gabe Brown had taken a lucrative position in another location, and we hate to see him go. And I know it was in August sometimes, but I don't know if the board will be meeting before he goes. I want to make sure that that we recognize the service he provided for the organization in nearly 30 years of working. And if we get a chance to, as a board, I'd like to like to be able to personally thank him. But if we can't, I think we should direct the staff, which I'm sure they would, to formally recognize Mr. Brown for his service.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Anyone else regarding
Yes,
that? Ms. Campbell?
I would like to echo Mr. Perkins' statement. Mr. Brown was fantastic, and I'm not surprised at all that someone scooped him up away from us. So it's very nice that we have Miss Jamie Rogers there to fill his shoes, and she's doing a good job already. I'd like to say I've talked to her several times today, but I certainly am going to miss Gabe Brown. He was always there to answer questions. He was always there, timely, and we are going to sorely miss Gabriel Brown in this organization.
We have all listened to irate customer complaints, but we don't do it all day, every day. And I never saw him that he didn't have a big smile on his face, and who knows how he mustered that up. But he exuded that positive attitude. Boy, when we had our budget workshop, he came in and said, I tell my people that every customer, whether it's a street sweeper or anyone else, gets served the best possible service. And if we could bottle the attitude that Gabe had, we would be a better organization. So thank you, Gabe. I hope you're hearing this. We all value you.
Madam Chairman, this is Larry Walker again.
Dr. Walker.
We all know where he's going, to New Orleans. I think we really should hold the position open for at least 6 months, because he may want to come back home.
I'm not sure Mr. Woody's going to want to do that, but Dr. Walker.
Madam Chairman, and something I was thinking about while you were making your previous motion, and that I think is something that's going to need attention, is a focus, and maybe Dr. Alexander can help with this, or recommend somebody who can as a liaison with historical Black colleges or something. But I think the difficulty is going to be, it's so competitive in the upper management and the executive positions, and I think we're going to have a special part of our strategy to focus on that, not just on the entry level or mid-level positions, but how do we compete with places like New Orleans or other large metropolitan areas for the high level for the high level positions that we'd like to fill.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. That's a valid point, and obviously this comes in the discussion of budget because it may easily be a budget issue for us to compete for top talent. Anyone else? If nothing more to come before the board, be safe, everyone. We are adjourned.